Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a woman who wants to attend a cookery class and an official at a tourist information centre. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello, Tourist Information Centre. Mike speaking. How can I help you?
Oh, hi. I wanted to find out about cookery classes. I believe there are some one-day classes for tourists.
Well, they're open to everyone, but tourists are always welcome. OK, let me give you some details of what's available. There are several classes. One very popular one is at the food studio.
The first cooking class is at the food studio, so studio has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, Tourist Information Centre. Mike speaking. How can I help you?
Oh, hi. I wanted to find out about cookery classes. I believe there are some one-day classes for tourists.
Well, they're open to everyone, but tourists are always welcome. OK, let me give you some details of what's available. There are several classes. One very popular one is at the food studio.
OK.
They focus on seasonal products, and as well as teaching you how to cook them, they also show you how to choose them.
Right, that sounds good. How big are the classes?
I'm not sure exactly, but they'll be quite small.
And could I get a private lesson there?
I think so. Let me check. Yes, they do offer those. Though, in fact, most of the people who attend the classes find it's a nice way of getting to know one another.
I suppose it must be, yes.
And this company has a special deal for clients where they offer a discount of 20% if you return for a further class.
OK, but you said there were several classes.
That's right. Another one you might be interested in is Bond's Cookery School. They're quite new. They just opened 6 months ago, but I've heard good things about them. They concentrate on teaching you to prepare healthy food, and they have quite a lot of specialist staff.
So is that food for people on a diet and things like that? I don't know if I'd be interested in that.
Well, I don't think they particularly focus on low-calorie diets or weight loss. It's more to do with recipes that look at specific needs, like including ingredients that will help build up your bones and make them stronger, that sort of thing.
I see. Well, I might be interested. I'm not sure. Do they have a website I could check?
Yes. Just key in the name of the school. It'll come up. And if you want to know more about them, every Thursday evening they have a lecture at the school. It's free, and you don't need to book or anything. Just turn up at 7:30. And that might give you an idea of whether you want to go to an actual class.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
OK, there's one more place you might be interested in. That's got a rather strange name. It's called the Ielts Centre. That's spelled A-R-R-E-T-S-A.
OK.
They've got a very good reputation. They do a bit of meat and fish cookery, but they mostly specialise in vegetarian dishes.
Right. That's certainly an area I'd like to learn more about. I've got lots of friends who don't eat meat. In fact, I think I might have seen that school today. Is it just by the market?
That's right. So they don't have any problem getting their ingredients. They're right next door. And they also offer a special 2-hour course in how to use a knife. They cover all the different skills, buying them, sharpening, chopping techniques. It gets booked up quickly, though, so you'd need to check it was available.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I'll go and check that out.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2.
Part 2. You will hear a talk to members of the public about plans for a new housing development near a town called Nunston. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hello everyone, it's good to see that so many members of the public have shown up for our presentation on the new housing development planned on the outskirts of Nunston. I'm Mark Reynolds and I'm Communications Manager at the development. I'll start by giving you a brief overview of our plans for the development. So, one thing I'm sure you'll want to know is why we've selected this particular site for a housing development. At present, it's being used for farming, like much of the land around Nunston. But because of the new industrial centre in Nunston, there's a lot of demand for housing for employees in the region, as many employees are having to commute long distances at present. Of course, there's also the fact that we have an international airport just 20 minutes drive away. But although that's certainly convenient, it wasn't one of our major criteria for choosing the site. We were more interested in the fact that there's an excellent hospital just 15 kilometres away, and a large secondary school even closer than that. One drawback to the site is that it's on quite a steep slope, but we've taken account of that in our planning, so it shouldn't be a major problem. We've had a lot of positive feedback about the plans. People like the wide variety of accommodation types and prices, and the fact that it's only a short drive to get out into the countryside from the development. We were particularly pleased that so many people liked the designs for the layout of the development, with the majority of people saying it generally made a good impression and blended in well with the natural features of the landscape, with provision made for protecting trees and wildlife on the site. Some people have mentioned that they'd like to see more facilities for cyclists, and we'll look at that, but the overall feedback has been that the design and facilities of the development make it seem a place where people of all ages can live together happily.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, You have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
OK, so I'll put a map of the proposed development up on the screen. You'll see it's bounded on the south side by the main road, which then goes on to Nunston. Another boundary is formed by London Road on the western side of the development. Inside the development, there'll be about 400 houses and 3 apartment blocks. There'll also be a school for children up to 11 years old. If you look at the south entrance at the bottom of the map, there's a road from there that goes right up through the development. The school will be on that road, at the corner of the second turning to the left. A large sports centre is planned with facilities for indoor and outdoor activities. This will be on the western side of the development, just below the road that branches off from London Road. There'll be a clinic where residents can go if they have any health problems. Can you see the lake towards the top of the map? The clinic will be just below this, to the right of a street of houses. There'll also be a community centre for people of all ages. On the northeast side of the development, there'll be a row of specially designed houses specifically for residents over 65, and the community centre will be adjoining this. We haven't forgotten about shopping. There'll be a supermarket between the 2 entrances to the development. We're planning to leave the 3 large trees near London Road, and it'll be just to the south of these. It's planned to have a playground for younger children. If you look at the road that goes up from the south entrance, you'll see it curves round to the left at the top, and the playground will be in that curve with nice views of the lake. OK, so now, does anyone have any questions?
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between a student called Mary and her tutor, Mr. Hadstone. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Mr. Headstone. Is this the right time for our meeting?
Yes, it is. Thanks for coming in at such a late hour, Mary. I know you've had a busy day studying and will be keen to get home. And thanks for volunteering to run this project. It's going to help you develop and practice skills needed by teachers today. Field trips are getting more and more a part of school life. So as a student of education, it'll be wonderful training for you. It's really a great opportunity.
We did loads of field trips at school, so I've got a good idea of what sort of things we could do.
I expect so. But we're here to go through the basics of planning one, and the trip leader carries a load of responsibility. Right now, you're focusing on activities, but your main job is to consider the dangers and come up with ways of countering or avoiding them. There are lots of government regulations you won't have been aware of on your school trips, but they're just a guideline for your own planning. Some of those school trips you went on would have been pretty adventurous, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and your plan needs to be tailored to the kind of trip you're doing. On a well-planned and successfully led adventure trip, we don't often hear of problems, even though sometimes there's bad weather, for example, that a school party has managed to combat. That's because the leader created a well-thought-out hazard management plan.
Ah, I thought I'd just be taking my mates out on a trek. Now it's all paperwork.
Yes, well, that's why I called you in. We'll work on this together over the next few days. I just wanted to give you a heads up on what you'll need to think about. There are some aspects that every trip needs to consider. What do you think they might be?
Well, heavy rain or high winds, I guess, and any dangers in the terrain.
Yes, we call those the significant factors. And another important one is the makeup of your group. But you don't need to go overboard. There are some kinds of hazard that you won't need to think about at all. Things like hurricanes, earthquakes, radioactivity, or major diseases such as cancer. The official name for those is unlikely events, because they almost certainly won't happen.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, so let's consider the hazards seen as most likely on a field trip into the countryside. Weather causes real problems. Overexposure to the sun or the cold, even the wind, can have a big impact. And of course, the weather can change very suddenly and without warning.
Yes, people can get into trouble in the hills if they don't bring extra layers of clothes and a jacket, even if they start walking on a hot day. Oh, and a raincoat too, of course. What's next then?
Well, let's think about possible activities and what you might need.
Yes, okay. Well, for hiking, of course, we need a first aid kit. Oh, and a decent topographic map of the area. And we need to make sure that more than one person can read it. I've run into lots of difficulties in the past with people who can't identify even major features, like rivers. And some people have no idea about contour lines. And I suppose a compass, too.
You'd need to list those. Then there are things that might be obvious but must be written down and considered seriously. For example, if there's a possibility of falling more than 2.5 meters, that's considered life-threatening. And I'm sure you would be aware of problems near the sea, like tides or high waves. And the trouble you can get into where there's a possibility of an avalanche, or a mudslide, or a flash flood if you're anywhere near rivers.
Yes. Well, I was thinking of an adventurous route for this trip. You know, that's always more fun. And it's such a cool feeling when you've achieved something really difficult.
Yes, okay, but then you need to consider who's going to be in your party. Don't go and plan things that are beyond the reach of most people, or you're asking for trouble. You need to take into account the physical strength and experience of the party as a whole. When you make your groups, Make sure there's at least one person in each one who's been hiking a few times before.
Wow! There's a lot to write down, isn't there? I'm really keen to get started now.
Well, good, because there's a lot more detail to consider. For now, I'll just mention 2 more of the common hazards for high school trips in particular.
Yes?
The Ministry of Education website says don't use inexperienced volunteers. And don't allow student drivers to bring their own cars, or to drive anyone else's car for that matter.
Well, now I really have something to think about. Thanks, Mr. Headstone.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 4. You will hear part of an environmental studies lecture on tree planting. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Tree planting now dominates political and popular agendas and is often presented as an easy answer to the climate crisis, as well as a way for business corporations to offset their carbon emissions. But unfortunately, tree planting isn't as straightforward as some people think. When the wrong trees are planted in the wrong place, it can do considerably more damage than good, failing to help either people or the environment. Reforestation projects are currently being undertaken on a huge scale in many countries, and it's crucial that the right trees are selected. A mix of species should always be planted, typical of the local natural forest ecosystem and including rare and endangered species, in order to create a rich ecosystem. It's important to avoid non-native species that could become invasive. Invasive species are a significant contributor to the current global biodiversity crisis and are often in competition with native species and may threaten their long-term survival. Restoring biodiversity that will maximise carbon capture is key when reforesting an area, but ideally any reforestation project should have several goals. These could include selecting trees that can contribute to wildlife conservation, improve the availability of food for the local community, and maintain the stability of soil systems. Meeting as many of these goals as possible, whilst doing no harm to local communities, native ecosystems and vulnerable species, is the sign of a highly successful tree planting scheme. To ensure the survival and resilience of a planted forest, it's vital to use tree seeds with appropriate levels of genetic diversity, the amount of genetic variation found within a species essential for their survival. Using seeds with low genetic diversity generally lowers the resilience of restored forests, which can make them vulnerable to disease and unable to adapt to climate change. Choosing the right location for reforestation projects is as important as choosing the right trees. Ultimately, the best area for planting trees would be informally forested areas that are in poor condition. It's better to avoid non-forested landscapes such as natural grasslands, savannas or wetlands, as these ecosystems already contribute greatly to capturing carbon. It would also be advantageous to choose an area where trees could provide other benefits, such as recreational spaces. Reforesting areas which are currently exploited for agriculture should be avoided, as this often leads to other areas being deforested. Large-scale reforestation projects require careful planning. Making the right decisions about where to plant trees depends on having the right information. Having detailed and up-to-date maps identifying high-priority areas for intervention is essential. Drone technology is a useful tool in helping to prioritise and monitor areas of degraded forest for restoration. In Brazil, it's being used to identify and quantify how parts of the Amazon are being devastated by human activities, such as rearing cattle and illegal logging. A good example of where the right trees were picked to achieve a restored forest is in Lampang province in northern Thailand. A previously forested site which had been degraded through mining was reforested by a cement company, together with Chiang Mai University. After spreading 60 centimetres of topsoil, they planted 14 different native tree species, which included several species of fig. Figs are a keystone species because of the critical role they play in maintaining wildlife populations. They are central to tropical reforestation projects as they accelerate the speed of the recovery process by attracting animals and birds which act as natural seed dispersers. This helps to promote diversity through the healthy regrowth of a wide range of plant species. Unlike the majority of fruit trees, figs bear fruit all year round, providing a reliable food source for many species. At this site, for example, after only 3 rainy seasons, monkeys started visiting to eat the fig fruits, naturally dispersing seeds through defecation. Reforestation projects should always aim to make sure that local communities are consulted and involved in the decision-making process. The restoration of mangrove forests in Madagascar is an example of a project which has succeeded in creating real benefits for the community. Destruction of the mangrove forests had a terrible impact on plant and animal life, and also badly affected the fishing industry, which was a major source of employment for local people living in coastal areas. The reforestation project involved hiring local people to plant and care for the new mangrove trees. Millions of mangrove trees have now been planted, which has resulted in the return of a healthy aquatic ecosystem. The mangroves also act as a defence against the increased threat of flooding caused by climate change. What's more, the local economy is more stable, and thousands more Madagascans are now able to send their children to school. One other important point to consider.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4.